Yo, what's up, football fans? We're back for another week. The Swampy Coliseum Podcast. Nathaniel is right there. I am Andrew Hudson. We're ready for another week. How we doing, Nathaniel?
Yes, sir. Oh man, doing okay. I think it was a wild Saturday just because I was on the road. We're heading to Montgomery, just trying to watch the game, and then I actually headed up at I think the 2 minute mark. We park at the hotel. I'm running up the hotel room, get to the
Mm.
hotel room, try to turn on CBS, and they said channel not authorized. And I'm like, oh
Ooh,
my gosh. I had no Wi-Fi, so I was like figuring, oh man. And then of course I go in and watch the last like 50 seconds and just watch them march down and take the win. But other than that, pretty solid weekend.
Nathaniel is obviously talking about the USC Michigan game from Saturday. Tough loss for USC, finishing the game there at the end, losing by a field goal. Nathaniel, I'll let you have the floor. What are your thoughts?
All right. I know this is supposed to be kind of split between a Michigan game recap and a Wisconsin game preview, but just to let you know, this will be a long rant about the Michigan game and then like a 2 second preview of next week. But
We wouldn't
man,
expect anything less.
exactly. But I mean, what a game! I bet it was a great game to watch as a neutral fan, as someone that just loves college football. But that was gut wrenching. I think even in the instant reaction, I was just frazzled. I think that game gave me a
Mm.
headache, honestly. But rewatched it, collected all my thoughts, and I mean, overall, USC looked like the better team. Like, if you would point to one thing that led to the loss, it'd just be execution. Like, offensively, in the first half, that was the worst offensive first half I've ever seen a Lincoln Riley coach team ever have. No
Mm.
execution. The offensive line was horrible. And I mean, that caused the play calling to be really vanilla, where it was a lot of quick screens to the outside, which I mean, we kept doing the same screen pass to our tight end. And I
Mm.
think we threw it 4 times and it got a net yardage of maybe 2 yards. And on the last one, our tight end got hurt, and I'm pretty sure he's out for the year, Lake McCree.
Mm.
So that's difficult. But I mean, yeah, back to the O line, they were bad. I saw the PFF grading. We had three offensive tackles that we rotated through. They got a total grade of 0 on pass blocking. Didn't even know that was possible. Did not
Mm.
know you could get a 0 pass blocking, and all three of them did. At halftime, we moved guys around, put some backups in. It got the offense going a little bit. I mean, don't get twisted. Miller Moss is still that guy. He threw, I think, 24 incompletions, but 15 of them were to get out of a sack. He had no
Mm.
time all game. He spent almost every single passing play on his back, but he still had 283 yards, 3 touchdowns, but a pick six. And that pick six was probably the only time he threw it at Will Johnson, and he made his pick. Zach Branch had a great day, but he had two big mistakes. One was the pick six. He had a hitch route, and then he was like, I feel so much space behind me. Let me back up so if I catch it, I can
Mm.
just burst by everyone. He kept backing up, and you just see Will John. Like, if you watch it in slow mo, you just see Will Johnson like, wow, he's just gonna give me this lane to pick it and bring it back. His other big mistake was he had a big drop on the last drive, which would have been a first down, got us pretty close to field goal range, but he came in with a lot of hype, deservedly so, but I don't think he's progressed as a wide receiver like as much as we would hope. Still a great offensive weapon. And
Yeah.
overall the receiving core did not really look electric as their potential. Like we have a lot of great guys, but a lot of drops, a couple of injuries that we'll talk about in a second. They're young, they will grow, but offensively, I think our MVP had to be Woody Marks. He had a humongous 65-yard run. I don't know if you saw this video, but
No.
2 plays later, Miller Moss goes back, gets hit, fumbles. Their
Oof.
defensive tackle picks it up. He's running, looks like a big man trying to get some yardage. Woody Marks comes out of nowhere, grabs the ball from him, and falls down. 2 plays later, we score. That
Wow.
was big time. That was big
Oof.
time. It got me going. It was beautiful. Um, but yeah, our running backs were the players of the offense or the MVPs of the offense. And then defensively, I mean, there wasn't really anything to say. We played a
Mm.
great game 90% of the time. I don't know if you saw, but Alex Orji had 32 yards passing.
Yeah.
They had over 200 yards rushing, but 3 plays gave them 150 yards. There
Mm.
were three
Wow.
50-yard just gashes. So if you played well 90% of the time. Second half, their offense had 10 yards until the last drive, which again, one big 50-yard play got them within the red zone, and they just slowly chipped away. And I mean, it was discouraging to see missed tackles, which popped up a couple times, but I mean, this defense still looks a lot better than last year, and I think they'll continue to improve and continue to grow. And all that brings me to the part that I do not want to talk about whatsoever.
Mm.
Um, I absolutely hate when people use officiating as an excuse. I'm not doing that here. I'm not saying officiating was why we lost. We lost because we did not execute. We lost because we did not play at the highest, like our highest potential for the entire game. That's why we lost.
Yeah.
But man, that was the worst. I will say it. That was the worst officiated game I've ever seen. And I played high
Yikes.
school football. I
Oof.
played like in high school, those are bad, but it's like, whatever, who cares? This was horrible. I was watching it with one of my coworkers that's an Iowa fan, and he looked at me middle of the game and he said, "Man, it looks like USC and UCLA are just gonna get hazed by the Big Ten." And that's what it felt like.
Mm.
Michigan ran 46 run plays, no holding calls. And it's like, all
Wow.
right, maybe Michigan's just amazing and they don't hold, but they were there. I rewatched it, gave me another headache because on all 3 touchdowns that they scored, the 2 big ones and then the one to end the game, it's just obvious holding calls
Mm.
right before they break it. Like the touchdown on the game winner, you literally see Anthony Lucas just shoves the tight end out of the way, steps into the gap, running backs headed right towards him, and then the tight end, as he's getting beat, just bear hugs him, falls backwards, and Anthony Lucas just gets pulled right out of the gap, and he just walks in the end zone. So
Wow.
it's like that all game long. And I made a list. I was
Oh
watching,
no.
rewatching it, made a list.
Kept
It got
receipts.
that bad. So to start off, illegal blindside hit on a punt sent our
Mm.
best route runner to the hospital. One guy literally
Nice.
grabbed him,
Oof.
pulled him into another dude who just destroyed him.
Yikes.
Way too illegal, but no call. It's all good. 2 face mask penalties on Miller Moss. One at the beginning of the game, one right before halftime. Both times the CBS crew were like, "What's happening? Why aren't they calling this obvious face mask penalty?" There's a
Wow.
kick catch interference on Zachariah Branch. There was a horse collar tackle on Jacoby Lane, one of our wideouts. Also took him out of the game. Or no, he came back, but took him out for a couple drives. So that's 2 wide receivers hurt. There were multiple delay of game penalties, and probably the worst of it all.
Mm.
4th and 1 in the first quarter. Michigan goes for it at midfield, stuff short. Dude's not even close. The running back fell down, then reached for it after he goes down. He was still short. Ref goes,
Wow.
picks the ball up, moves it about a yard, first down. They don't review it. Next play is their
Wow.
first touchdown. And I
Wow.
sat there, like when it was happening, I was at work and I was kind of like moving around doing stuff. And I was like, he's short. Then I go and they're like, no commercial break. And I look over and like, what's happening? I'm like, okay, maybe he reached over. The pile was like iffy there. And then I go, you look at Twitter, all the pictures, he is so short. But also on Lincoln Riley for not challenging it. But yeah, all that being said, I mean, you saw that the voters actually watched that game, and
Mm.
USC only dropped 2 spots. And I
Yeah.
think they knew. They saw what happened. And we still lost. Michigan won the game. I think USC more so lost that game than Michigan won it, but Michigan won it. I think this is going to just be fuel for this team. And this is my preview for next week. We have Wisconsin in the Coliseum. Alex Grinch is on the other side coaching the safeties. We're better than them at all aspects of the game. Tyler Van Dyke isn't close to Miller Moss's level, and this is going to be a blowout.
Bold prediction, but it's there. Yeah, man. I mean, what a crazy game. I was able to pull it up and see what was happening at the end there, and I was sad for you. I mean, I was saying last week, I think Orgy's going to bring in the run game, and
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened.
yeah.
They were able to run all over USC, but the good thing is their hopes are not done.
Oh yeah,
They've got
100%.
plenty of games to play. Definitely have a chance to make it into the playoff. Like this season is not over, which is
Oh yeah,
nice
not at
compared to
all.
how things have been previously. That 12-team playoff really makes things more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge game. Wisconsin coming up next week. Hopefully, it's a bounce back game for them. For the Gators, had a nice little pick me up after terrible games we're coming off of. We were able to take down Mississippi State, a 45-28 victory. Uh, really, offense was looking good on all cylinders, really. And that's more of a testament to how terrible the Mississippi State defense was. Wow, they're bad. And we were going into it thinking, well, yeah, Florida's a 5.5 point favorite. Don't know why. Well, they proved it to us.
Yeah.
But Mertz went out, pretty much played perfect, only a couple incompletions, had 3 passing touchdowns, a rushing touchdown as well. Lagway had minimal time, but 7 for 7 passing, led touchdown drives as well. So really good play on offense. Defense is still our struggle. That's gonna be a tough part of every game we play. I mean, Mississippi State a few times just marched their way down the field easily. So when we get to the tougher part of our schedule, which we know is coming soon, that's where we're going to find our problems. So happiness with how the game went. Yes, glad we got a victory. We've got to be happy in the ones we get this year. Okay, so I was very happy, glad to see it. We're coming into a bye week, but then after that, playing against UCF. UCF, a good team who I just heard is leading the country in rushing yards this year. So, I we'll talk about that more next week. My hopes will be dashed once again, but glad that Florida was able to have a victory, and it gives another week of Napier's life as the Florida coach. So we'll hang with him for now. But USC, Florida, we'll put them to the side. Let's talk about overall week impressions. There were some other good games from this week for sure. What was one that mainly stood out to you, Nathaniel?
Oh, so many. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, there's a lot of good games. I'm gonna go down to Utah, Oklahoma State. I
Mm,
think that was a game, I mean, big for the Big 12 race. And I think Utah cemented that they are the best team in the Big 12 by a wide margin. I mean, they didn't even have Cam Rising. I thought when I saw we talked about it last week. If Cam Rising doesn't go, it's over. Like
right.
Oklahoma State was supposed to be the veteran team. They're supposed to have a great offensive line, which needs to be able to, mesh together. This might be that game where they do it. Ollie Gordon, all these weapons on offense. And I mean, Utah just bullied them all game. They were up 22-3 with like 6 minutes left. Alan Bowman got taken out at halftime, but then
Mm.
his backup sucked. I forgot what his name is, Garrett something.
Hmm.
And then Alan Bowman came back with 5 minutes left and scored 2 touchdowns, threw an interception. But I mean, I said week 0 that Utah was the biggest frauds, especially in the country, not even the Big 12. I said it in the country. But I was wrong. They didn't have Cam Rising, and they bullied probably the second or third best team in the Big 12. And I think they're going to be the team coming out representing Big 12 in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was a huge game. And with Cam Rising not there, I definitely had questions coming in. Utah is still strong enough to hang in there with the victory, a close game, one that was fun to watch. A huge game as well that we have to mention. Tennessee visiting Oklahoma and coming away with the victory. I mean,
Yeah.
Tennessee again just showing their strength. They were up 22-3 in this game. Their defense is stellar. I don't know much of what else to say. I know we had questions about Jackson Arnold coming in, but defense took it to him. I mean, ended up with the 25-15 victory. I don't even think it was that close in itself, but they went into Oklahoma, took them down. It was college game day, everything there, and they just proved once again that they're one of the best teams in the country. So, man, they're going to get right into the SEC slate, and it's
Oh yeah.
just so much. I mean, we're going to talk, of course, later about Georgia and Alabama. They're playing this week, but these other teams are in that mix of who's the best team in the SEC and who's going to stake their claim in the SEC championship first, but then also the playoffs. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think that game I was trying to decide if it was more of like an indictment of where Oklahoma is in the Brett Venables rebuild or how good Tennessee actually is. And I think
Mm,
it's a little bit of both. I think Oklahoma's defense under Venables like vastly improved since last year. And it's ever since he took over from Lincoln Riley, it's been an improvement every single year. And I think this year, I mean, Nico was he was all right. He had a couple of fumbles. They forced two turnovers, and I mean, Tennessee moved the ball a bit, but again, 25 points. They're averaging 63 on the year,
mm,
which is insane to me to
yeah.
even think about. And there was a top 25 team mixed in the last three games. But sadly, the quarterback, Dylan Arnold, Jackson Arnold, I was getting ahead of myself. They sent Dylan Gabriel away just because Jackson Arnold's hit, and he was awful.
Yep.
He got benched at halftime, and he had three turnovers. And I don't know if he's the guy leading this team going forward, but he's going to have to. I think it was one of the funniest plays of the game, but it was also kind of just the play that described the entire game. Was he had an RPO right after Oklahoma got the ball at the 33. They're down 12-3. They have a chance to score, get within two, close game. Um, at the 33, RPO pulls the ball, looks downfield at first. Tennessee freezes because they respect, Jackson Arnold's running ability. But as they start to come in, he just goes. He's like, "Oh, I have a screen pass over there waiting for me.
Mm,
Tennessee's not really close. Let me just fire it." But of course, it's across the field at the far hash. Fires it way short. He threw it backwards. The ball
mm.
bounces 20 yards backwards, and then Tennessee gets it right back. And I think he gets pulled like a drive later. But I mean, they're gonna have to figure out that offense, and it kind of sucks. They had Dylan Gabriel last year, and they sent him away because they thought they had a better quarterback, and now I don't think that's true.
Yeah. Seemed like the wrong move, I would basically guarantee. So tough loss there for OU. Those were some good games. Another one, not really to talk a lot about, but to point out, of course, Notre Dame had the tough loss last week to their not in-state opponent, Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, now 23 in the country, comes back and loses to Buffalo. Loses to Buffalo 23-20 in overtime, their fellow MAC opponent. Oh, it just looks worse for Notre Dame after looking.
Action, man.
That's some action. That is some crazy action to look at. And another one really to key in on was Friday night special that we made a pick on, but we were both wrong. Illinois was able to take down Nebraska, Dylan Raiola's team, there in overtime, 31-24. Luke Altmaier, man,
Oh
coming
man.
out and balling out in that game. I mean, what did you have takeaways from that one?
Yeah, I think Illinois, they look good. I mean,
Yeah.
they made their defense was physical. They caused turnovers. They got Toyola. I mean, we know the culture that Matt Rule brings, and I think Illinois out toughed that culture. And I think, Luke Altmaier didn't make mistakes, and that was a big test, and they passed. And they have big stretch of games coming up. But I mean, I was pretty impressed by Illinois for sure.
Yeah, I was as well, and they've got a great matchup coming up this week. We'll talk about against Penn State. Looking forward to talking about that soon. With that, let's move on to our trivia question.
Oh
We've
gosh.
got our third round of trivia. I've got a question prepared for Nathaniel this time. I think it'll be a good one. We're going back in time here, okay?
Oh
We're looking
no.
at the history books, and I've got a question for you. I need you to try and name me the top 10 teams in overall wins in college football history. Okay,
That's
so we're
crazy.
talking we're talking best teams, but we're talking going
Yeah.
back in time. You've got to
Oh
consider
gosh.
who've been around for a long time. So, top 10 teams in total wins.
It's crazy because I know you know that USC is at 11, so I can't just blurt out USC, get them. Okay, but we
That's
got
fair.
to go.
Even on this list, I have the what I'm looking at, which I've seen different lists and I've gotten some different numbers at times. But through confirming, I'm pretty sure on this list that I have. And USC is sitting at 13 from what I can see. So,
Well, it's because the
but it's
NCAA took about 30 wins in the middle of the
that's
2000s.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. But okay, we got them just outside. So what are you thinking?
Okay, well, Michigan's won.
Michigan's won
Um,
just past 1,000 wins. The only team over 1,000.
yeah. I'm not, that's the only one I know exactly where that one's placed. The other ones, they're going to be scattered. But I mean, you always got to go, all right, you got to think like longevity, who have been winning a lot. Um, I would throw names like Army or like Yale out, but I don't think they've had the longevity. Like they had the earlies, not the laters. Nebraska, they're good back in the day.
Nebraska, you got Nebraska sneaking in there at number 9.
There we go. Ohio State's got to be in there.
Ohio State number 3, 967
All
wins.
right. Now you got to go. All right, who's in the SEC? We have Alabama, obviously. They're in there.
Alabama number 2, one ahead of Ohio State, 968.
LSU.
LSU number 17.
Oh,
Number
whoa.
17 out
Okay.
of
I thought
there.
they'd be on the lower end. Florida State, obviously not. Florida, are they in there? I don't think so. Florida?
Florida, no. Florida's down at 28.
Yeah. Ooh, all right. All right.
All
Let's
right, let's
rack the
lock
brains.
in here.
Notre
Let's
Dame.
lock in
Notre
here.
Dame. Come on.
Notre
Give me
Dame, there
Notre
you
Dame.
go. Number
Give me
5,
Notre Dame.
951.
Okay. What? I have Michigan, Ohio State,
You got,
Alabama.
yeah, I'll give it to you. You got number 1, Michigan, number 2, Alabama, number 3, Ohio State. You've got number 5, Notre Dame, and number 9, Nebraska. So
All
looking for
right.
5 more.
I feel like Miami's way too recent. Oh, come on, Oklahoma and Texas.
There we go. Oklahoma, they're at number 6, 947, and Texas, number 4, 952.
All
So
right,
with that, we've got the top 6. You got the top
and we
6:
got
Michigan,
9.
Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, and you got number 9, Nebraska. We're looking for 7, 8, and 10.
7, 8, and 10. All right, old teams, old teams, old teams. Which is kind of crazy because it's like I'm thinking like who's older than SC, who has like more history than them. Is it like a Harvard?
Harvard's number 10. Harvard is number 10. Good pull. That is 901 wins for Harvard. And we need 2
Okay,
more, just 7 and 8.
Georgia, are they in there?
Georgia's number 11.
Oh, okay, okay. We're not gonna have teams like I don't think anyone from the ACC is in there.
No ACC.
Yeah, I was gonna say Wake Forest is a pretty old school, but they just suck.
Hmm. That's fair.
I watched a video on that recently where it's like they're one of the oldest schools that have football, but they're just trash. Um,
So I'll tell you, do you want to go for it? You want to give me a couple guesses?
All right. Can you give me the current? Oh, is SMU one of them?
SMU is not.
Okay.
No, SMU,
Pony
they're further down the
Express.
list.
They probably got all their wins taken by NCAA. You know how
Oh,
that
that's
goes.
fair. That's fair. No, we're looking for one along the lines of a line of thinking you had earlier. But then just another team from history that had one coach for decades and decades who carried them to great success.
Penn State?
Penn State number 8. Penn State
What?
933
What?
victories.
They're like that. I mean, how many? They don't really even have any national championships. That's crazy.
One under Joe Paterno, if I'm
I
not
think
mistaken
so.
about
Yeah.
that. But yeah,
Yeah.
they certainly not underachieved, but you would think they won more based on their
Yeah. With
history.
that many wins. Okay. And was the line of thinking before? Was it one of those like? Oh, is it like Yale?
It is Yale, number 7.
There
That
we go.
honestly, one of the first teams you named was Yale. You
I've
threw it out,
yeah.
but that was good. That was your top 10 right there. I'll run it
There
through
we
again.
go.
Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Oklahoma, Yale, Penn State, Nebraska, and Harvard. Wow, very, very well done. Just a couple misses that you had there, but
Just a
we're able
couple.
to pull together those. That's fun. And looking at these two, some of the winning percentages for these teams is crazy. You know,
Yeah,
these teams overall, the top three actually, Michigan, Alabama, Ohio State, all 73% win percentage
it's
for their
insane.
whole career,
That's
which
insane.
is or not career, for their whole longevity
Yeah.
as a school. So pretty wild. USC's knocking at the door, but yeah, that's our trivia question for today. I hope
I
you were
like that.
able to
That was a
follow
fun one.
along
That
and
was a fun
yeah,
one.
yeah, that was some history right there we could pull out from. I saw a list too that was ranking best teams that factored in like okay, they threw out Yale and Harvard just because of longevity and they
Yeah.
put in some other teams with their championships. So fun stuff to look at. But that's our trivia questions. Let's jump back to this season. And we're going to talk about our risers and fallers now. So, after the week that was, who is our biggest riser? You would say, what's your thought, Nathaniel?
Yeah, I mean, I could go Clemson 2 weeks in a row. I mean, their offense is really humming right now. I think what they just played NC State and they just gee, that first half offense has been crazy. But
Wild.
we just talked about them. Let's go Illinois. I mean, like I said
Yeah.
before, big test against Nebraska, and they passed with flying colors. I mean, they did go into overtime. I think Nebraska did, look like a Scott Frost Nebraska, but I mean, Illinois made them make those mistakes. I mean, they kept Raiola in the pocket and they just really crushed down on him. And then when he did try to move around, you realize that kid's not Patrick Mahomes. I think I was laughing as I was watching that game in overtime as he had those two big sacks where he just kept running backwards and Illinois is like, yeah, sure, keep losing yardage right now, but
Mm.
they played like very well on defense, and big stretch with Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon being three of their next four opponents. So we'll really quickly see how that toughness and how legit that hype is.
Yeah, definitely. Huge matchup coming this week. I think that is a fun game that I'm looking forward to. My riser and faller are actually going to be tied together in this one because they matched up this week. My biggest
Oh,
riser is BYU. My biggest faller is Kansas State. After their matchup this week, we were talking up, I was especially talking up Avery Johnson coming off of last week, and they go at BYU and lose 38-9.
yeah,
38-9, just got
bad.
destroyed. And BYU just looking strong. They're 4-0 now. They've jumped into the rankings. They've got another good matchup coming this week. But they're showing strength that man, BYU just keeps coming year after year. They lose a quarterback, they come back with more strength. They seem like maybe they're not going to be able to stand up to the test, and we'll see about being in the Big 12 what that is going to look like overall. But they haven't had much to start the season, but a great win here against Kansas State, which we still think very highly of. But along with that, Kansas State, man, they just laid an egg in this game. Avery Johnson was not able to put things together to get the offense moving. BYU just seemed like they had complete control in the whole game. When we look at overall, considering what the game looked like, the third down efficiency, it's funny how Kansas State actually did better. Kansas State had way more yards. It was really strange when you look at the stats, but the fact of the matter is BYU just got things done quick. They didn't need so much, and they also forced turnovers to be able to score on instead of needing their offense to be able to do all the heavy lifting. So, and then they were able to hold themselves on penalties, only 2 penalties, 20 yards. Kansas State, 8 penalties for 50. So, man, just impressive win for BYU. We'll see how they can carry it on for the rest of the season. And they also have a matchup we'll talk more about in a minute. But BYU biggest riser, Kansas State biggest faller for me. Who's your biggest faller?
I could go with the entire state of North Carolina because
Oh,
all their schools
oh,
got swept in ugly
oh.
fashion. But I'm not going to do it to them. I'm just going to mention it. Let them hear it for a sec. But I didn't go Clemson 2 in a row for biggest riser, but I will go Missouri 2 times in a row for biggest
Oof.
faller. I think even in the AP poll, they dropped. I think they are the lowest kind of like playoff contender really that's undefeated. They're the lowest one, right
Mm,
before Michigan, USC, and LSU. So I think everyone's starting to back off on the Missouri hype. They had so much.
yeah.
They had a really strong year last year. They beat Ohio State. Granted, Ohio State was down to their second, third string quarterback, but beat Ohio State. And then they go into the year a top 16 after week 2, and they beat up on Murray State and Buffalo. So is that a top 16 resume? No, but the hype was there. And then they struggle against arguably a top 4 or 5 ACC team in Boston College, which coming off of the hype of beating Florida State, and then they just struggled a lot against realistically a bottom 4 SEC team in Vanderbilt, a,
Mm,
a yearly bottom feeder. And I mean, in overtime, I think they missed a lot of field goals, which, I mean, I think they missed 3, one from 24, one from 40, and one from 46. But I mean, Vandy also missed a field goal in OT. I mean, Missouri's running game has been good. Noel's been doing big things on that end, but the passing game with Theo Weiss, with Luther Burden, with Brady Cook throwing the ball, they can't push it downfield at all. So that's one thing they have to get it figured out. They do have a very easy schedule. I was looking at it before before we got on, and they have a bye week. They have A&M. I think they have like Massachusetts,
mm.
Auburn in there. Then they play Bama. Then they have a bye week. Then they have Oklahoma, and then the rest of their SEC. No real big teams. So they have two big games on the schedule. But this is a schedule where you don't really expect to have struggled until maybe A&M, but definitely not until Bama or Oklahoma. So we'll see. I mean, that's the end of October, so they have plenty of time and 2 bye weeks to kind of figure it out. But I mean, until they prove me wrong, maybe I'll just keep putting them as my biggest faller.
That's fair. Yeah, a Vanderbilt team that looked strong coming in the year, beating Virginia Tech in overtime, but then just last week lost to Georgia State.
Yeah,
So that Clark Lee is doing a good job with that team, but still they should not be up to the standard of Missouri,
nope.
taking Missouri to overtime. So they got away with the win, scraped by, but
Yeah,
I don't know what the rest of the season is going to look like for them, even though, like you said, they don't have the toughest schedule. So
and they haven't been on the road all year long. So when
Mm-mm.
I think they play Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I'm not too sure, but one of those games is a road game, which they're not going to have that advantage.
Yeah, I certainly don't have faith in them to carry as strong a year as they did last year. But with that, we'll move on to our picks for this week. Our picks, we'll go a little faster than we have in previous weeks. We'll get through these picks, but some good games, ranked matchups, some we already have pointed to previously. Last week, a rough one for Nathaniel, 1-4 on the week. I was able to get by with a 3-2 record. It was really the Louisville and Michigan games that got me through. Everything else we had the same, but I have a 12-9 record right now. You are at 11-10. We're still neck and neck right there. I just flip-flopped with you for who was in first place. So let's go ahead and talk about our games for this week. We're starting off with two teams we've discussed. Oklahoma State is traveling to Manhattan, Kansas to take on the Kansas State Wildcats. Who you got in this first one?
I mean, this is a game, two former top 15 teams coming off an embarrassing loss. Who can flip the switch? Can Alan Bowman find his groove before the last 5 minutes of the game? Can Owlie Gordon finally start living up to the hype? Avery Johnson, will he, have last week as a turning point and focus on keeping the ball safe? I think for Kansas State to win, Avery Johnson has to keep the ball secure and actually have maybe a few chunk gains throwing it, but I don't think he's at that point yet. And I think Oklahoma State, I've been saying they're a veteran team and they haven't been showing it. They're going to pull it off. They're going to show it here. I think they're going to figure out Kansas State's defense. It's going to be a big running game, I feel like. And I think they're going to take a close one in Lawrence.
All right, you're saying Oklahoma State is coming in and getting the victory. We've talked about Oklahoma State previously as saying we both picked them to win the Big 12. And so it's almost like we're locked in here in picking
We
them,
have
but
to be.
I don't want to be locked into that, okay? All right, I can say that I was wrong. It's okay. But my thought here is you talked about them being a veteran team. With that, they have a veteran coach. They've got Mike Gundy. But I talked about their end of the game situation a couple weeks ago. I just don't trust the decisions he was making. It was disappointing, the lack of using timeouts, the calling bad play calls at the end of a game in a pressure situation. I don't know that I trust them in a situation like this going into Kansas State. We know uh, the Wildcats just came off of a tough loss, really underperformed, but I like Chris Kleiman leading them. I think Avery Johnson can have a comeback game, and so I'm going to pick Kansas State to win it, and it's okay. All right, I don't have to be locked in with the Cowboys. Here we go. Next, number 15, Louisville traveling to number 16, Notre Dame. Tough one here. Now, this one, I really don't love either team. we
No, no.
we have talked about this, but I just don't trust the Notre Dame offense. I
Yeah.
don't trust that they will have the consistency to be able to win this game against Louisville. Louisville, we were questioning them last week against Georgia Tech. They came out strong, had a 12-point victory. I'm going to say they keep it going. They come into Notre Dame, they get the win. I'm picking Louisville by right now. Notre Dame is a 6-point favorite. I think Louisville could win by 6 or more.
Okay, okay. Yeah, this was a hard one for me. I think going in, like, you can't, like, in my head, you can't go against Notre Dame, but watching like Louisville play Georgia Tech, obviously it's Georgia Tech, but Louisville's defense, like, I remember watching it last year when they, against Florida State, against all these teams, their defense brought them to a lot of victories. And when they played USC, really good defense, but Miller Moss was just better. But going up against Notre Dame, like, what has Louisville done really well defensively? Stopping the run. What is the only thing Notre Dame can do offensively? Run the ball. So I think it's strength against strength. I think that Riley Leonard, he to win this game, he needs to be able to throw the ball just a little bit, not even a lot, just be able to keep the pressure off, not have the box just absolutely loaded. And I think they learned a lot of lessons from that NIU game. And they're at home. I think Louisville, their offense really is try to run it, and they haven't been super successful at it. And then it's Tyler Shuck giving some big chunk plays to some of their playmakers. And I think Notre Dame's defense is too good for it. I think it's going to be an absolute dogfight. Think it's
Hmm.
going to be just a bunch of them just throwing haymakers at each other, just in the trenches. And I think Notre Dame's going to take this. They're at home. They can't, just like how Michigan couldn't have two embarrassing losses at home. I don't think Notre Dame can get two embarrassing losses at home.
That's fair. Yeah, they already have once this season. This would be a huge letdown if they lose again at home this week. Let's move on to a Big Ten matchup here. We've discussed already number 19, Illinois, traveling to play number 9, Penn State. Who you got here?
Yeah, this one, I mean, we're talking about Illinois earlier, and I've been really impressed. Luke Altmaier, and just how good that team's been. But then you have Penn State, who has been honestly struggling. They played Kent State as a bounce back game from what, Bowling Green. So they had a good game, and I think Drew Aller, he's figuring stuff out. But I think when they play tough opponents, they don't really, play as well as everyone thinks they will. And I mean, they're an 18-point favorite. It is in Happy Valley, but I think Illinois covers. I don't think they win though. I think Penn State. I think their defense is just good enough. I think their running game is just too good to lose this game at home. But I think Illinois, they're going to surprise a lot of people about how close this game is going to be.
Yeah, an 18-point line is a lot
Yeah,
to lay there for a
huge.
Penn State team that we're not so sure about. But I trust the brand as well. Penn State at home against a less experienced Illinois team. I think they're going to be able to pull it out, get the victory. Next one, we've got number 22, BYU, my biggest riser from the week, going to play at Baylor. Baylor's a 3-point favorite in this one, and this is a tough game to pick. Now, looking at the two teams here, we have Baylor, who just came off of a different win last week. Or I'm sorry, they came off of losing a close
Hmm.
one to Colorado, which we didn't even talk about that one. Baylor, oh my goodness, up by 7 at the end. What Shadur Sanders makes maybe a 40-yard Hail Mary at the end of the game to score a touchdown to send it to overtime. Colorado ends up getting the win in overtime. What an awful loss there for Baylor. Heartbreaking there at the end of the game. So they're coming off of that pain of losing that game against Baylor. We just saw BYU come out and throw haymakers at Kansas State, and I'm going to pick them to keep winning. BYU, I'm going to say they win this game even at Baylor and maybe even jump higher in the rankings.
Yeah, I think yeah, that's fair. This is definitely a tough one. It's in Baylor. I think that's the only thing that's kind of, giving Baylor hope. And Baylor's, I mean, their defense, they looked good against Colorado. Obviously, Colorado was always going to kick it into gear sometime. That Nebraska game was just surprising to me just because that's just not how Shadur looks. The offensive line there's no way an offensive line could be that bad. I think it was just one
Mm.
of their off days. I don't think they're that good, but I mean, coming back to this game, BYU, really impressive game against Kansas State. But I mean, looking at it, every single point they scored besides their field goal was off of some type of turnover, so off of
Mm.
some type of short field, which props to them getting those turnovers, getting those turnover on downs just to get the ball to their offense. But I don't think their offense is really as explosive as Colorado. And I think Baylor, their offense isn't too great either. I had to look up who their quarterback was, Sawyer
Mm.
Robertson, who has been doing decent all year. Yeah, and I think Baylor at home. I think they shut down BYU's offense. I think it's probably going to be some low scoring game, like 24-17 or something like that. But this is a team that went blow for blow with Utah. So I think Baylor comes out and takes this one.
All right. There we go. And that brings us to our game of the week. Huge game. Georgia traveling to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Maybe the biggest game of the year. This might right here be the biggest game. It could be a rematch. It could be two teams that play 3 times this year. Who knows? I mean, there's already been there are going to be a few games that could be the case for this year. But Georgia and Alabama, you've got the first pick. Georgia is a 1.5-point favorite. What are your thoughts?
Oh man, this is tough. I think the biggest question is Kirby Smart. Is he 1-5 against Alabama, or is he just 1-5 against Nick Saban?
Nick Saban,
So
sure.
I this is a tough one. I mean, you have Georgia coming into Tuscaloosa, and this is the Georgia team with Carson Beck coming back. This is a Georgia team. It's Georgia. They're going to be good. They're this rising dynasty, and it's kind of looking like Alabama might be a little on their way out. But I have faith in Kalen DeBoer. I have faith in Jalen Milroe. I think Ryan Williams. That offense is just crazy. Their running game and their offensive line is where we thought last year they should have been, but they just never were. I think right now that they're firing on all cylinders. And I think Kalen DeBoer really is able. I think he's a great offensive mind. He's been able to get them, doing what they want to do. And what it comes down for me is we've seen Georgia struggle against Kentucky, and they never found that on switch. We have seen Alabama struggle against worse competition, but they found that on switch. And you look at their schedule, you think, oh, they've just blown out teams. Yeah, but a couple of those games, it was close down the wire, like against USF and then or UAB, one of the two. And then they
Hmm.
just turned it on the switch and they blew them out. And I think
Yeah.
just an offense with that type of gear, I think Alabama's gonna upset Georgia in Tuscaloosa, which is a weird thing for me to say, but I think that's how it's gonna go.
It is strange, but that's the place where we're at right now. Yeah, this game is gonna come down to a few plays, I think, and who can make the big plays, who can avoid the big mistake. I was looking at the offensive and defensive stats for each team, so similar. And you've got to
Hmm.
factor in the teams they've played. Georgia's obviously already played Clemson this year. Uh, Alabama played a Wisconsin team that, we don't really think that they're that good, but other than that, they've played worse teams, USF, Western Kentucky. So we're not totally sure who they are this year, that Alabama team. But Georgia is coming in with strength. They have the history, the model that they're going off of year after year. Kalen DeBoer, his first huge matchup in the SEC. And I think Kirby's just going to have too much for him. I'm picking Georgia to win. They're going to continue that regular season win streak that they still have. And I'm going to pick them. You mentioned Ryan Williams. Man, what a player that guy is.
Insane.
17 years old. And he doesn't turn 18 until February.
Yeah, it's
The
insane.
season's going to be over before he turns 18. He can't even vote in this year's election, but he's out there just destroying teams in college football. It makes me think about I played basketball with this young guard, J. Michael Plummer. He was a freshman, and he's out there balling. I mean, he is destroying these other guys. And I remember we're halfway through the year, his freshman season, and they're like, "Oh, happy birthday, J. Michael! Happy 15th birthday!" I was like, wait. You've been a 14-year-old just destroying these 18-year-olds for the past few weeks. This is crazy. That's what Ryan Williams is doing right now. But even with those playmakers, I don't trust Jalen Milroe over Carson Beck. I don't trust the system of Kalen DeBoer over Kirby Smart. So I'm picking Georgia, the team that we know, the team that I feel we can trust more. And with that, that's another episode of the Swampy Coliseum Podcast. Thank you for listening. Again, follow us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Instagram. We've got instant reactions. We've got updates throughout the week. So check in with all of that. Man, another good week. I'm excited for that last game. This is going to be
Oh
a
man.
fun week of college football. Do you have anything you're looking forward to specifically?
I'm looking forward to USC to get back on track, but I'll be at a wedding on that Saturday, so I think I'm gonna miss that Georgia Alabama game. So we'll see.
Oof.
I might be watching it under, but also I have too much respect for the groom and bride. I'm gonna have to suck it up.
Hey, that's fair. We'll watch the highlights for sure, no matter what. But for another episode, that's Nathaniel Gilmore. I'm Andrew Hudson. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.